It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, like the stillness that precedes the dawn. A moment in time, so ordinary yet carrying within it the essence of something far greater. Imagine a tiny seed, dormant, wrapped in its protective shell. Seemingly insignificant, it lies alone, suspended in the vastness of the earth, waiting. And for many, this stillness mirrors life itself often. We too feel dormant, unsure of our place, waiting for a spark, a sign, or a reason to begin. But then, something shifts. The seed is gently placed in the soil, its potential finally given a chance to emerge. The soil, dark and rich, holds the promise of nourishment, of life. Together, the seed and the earth begin a silent partnership. One cannot exist without the other. The soil, the feminine principle, offers its nurturing embrace. The seed, carrying the masculine principle of potential, reaches upward, driven by an impulse it cannot fully understand. This is the dance of life, where two forces different yet complementary interact to create something far greater than the sum of their parts. In the quiet spaces of our own lives, we are all like that seed. We stand at the edge of possibility, unsure of how to begin. We wait for the right conditions, the right time. But, just as the seed cannot grow without the earth's nurturing, we too need the right balance of energies within ourselves to move forward. Life, in its most profound moments, is a reflection of this delicate interplay between action and reflection, between giving and receiving. As we age, as we grow older, these moments of waiting seem to stretch longer. Life, once full of motion, now quiets down, urging us to reflect. But the lesson of the seed remains. There is power in waiting, in stillness, in allowing life to unfold when the time is right. The masculine principle, represented by the seed, is the driving force, the will, the intention, the spark. It carries with it the energy of action, of doing, of becoming. The feminine principle, represented by the soil, is the space of being, of nurturing, listening, and transforming. Both are necessary. Both are inside us. It is only when we understand how they work together that we can truly begin the process of growth. In our youth, we often seek one without the other. We chase success, forget to rest, push forward without considering how we are fed by the world around us. But as time moves on, we begin to understand something crucial. We cannot move forward unless we first allow ourselves to be nourished. The soil must be just as important as the seed, just as much a part of the equation. And so, life continues, like the seed and the soil, like the quiet and the action. We are forever in the dance of balance, sometimes moving boldly toward the light, and at other times, patiently waiting for the right moment to rise. It is a dance that continues, whether we are young or old, whether we feel strong or uncertain. For now, the seed lies still, and so, too, do we, gathering the strength for what is yet to come. There are moments in life when the quiet stillness is broken, when the long stretch of waiting gives way to action. For some, these moments are few and far between. For others, they come in waves, sweeping us into a current we cannot resist. Such is the nature of masculine energy, active, expansive, a force that propels us forward, that urges us to move, to do, to accomplish. It's not unlike the first stirrings of the seed beneath the soil. At first, it is a subtle shift, a pressure building, an instinctive drive to push outward. The seed feels the call to rise, to break free of its confinement. It is no longer content to stay hidden in the dark earth. There is an impulse, deep and undeniable, to grow, to reach for the light. And so it begins. I remember, not long ago, finding myself at the edge of such a moment, feeling the tug of something greater than myself. The pull toward action. In the quiet rhythm of my daily life, there had been a growing sense of restlessness. I had been drifting, like a boat at sea without direction. Days passed in repetition, and I wondered whether I was simply waiting for something to happen, for life to reveal itself in its fullness. But then, without warning, a shift. The restless energy within me could no longer be ignored. It was as though the masculine energy, the force of movement, of will, had finally been awakened. I felt the drive to act, to take charge, to assert myself in a way I hadn't in years. And with it, the clarity to begin shaping my life once more. Yet, as I discovered, masculine energy does not come without its shadows. Like the seed pushing through the soil, there are moments when the energy of action becomes overwhelming. It's easy to mistake this drive for a need to dominate, to control everything around you. There is an urgency to the task at hand, a sense that nothing can be left undone. And when that drive is unchecked, when the masculine energy becomes too forceful, it can become a storm. I saw it in myself, this need to push, to make things happen, even when the time was not yet right. It's a mistake many of us make, especially as we grow older, when the desire to get things done seems more pressing than ever. We forget to pause, to listen. We forget that action without intention can lead to chaos. And so, the energy that was meant to propel us forward can, if unchecked, leave us feeling empty, as if we've fought too hard for too long and yet arrived nowhere. There is a fine line, I've learned, between healthy masculine energy and its imbalanced counterpart. The former propels us toward our goals, toward meaningful action. It is the drive that brings us purpose, that shapes our world through focus and determination. But when it goes unchecked, it becomes a force that pushes too hard, that seeks to dominate, leaving little room for the gentler energies of life, those moments of rest, of reflection, of quiet growth. The key, then, is balance. The masculine force within us is not meant to be eradicated or stifled. It is meant to be harnessed, directed with intention and purpose. It is the energy that builds, that protects, that strengthens, but it must coexist with the quieter, more receptive feminine energy, the space that allows us to pause, to reflect, and to renew. It is only when we acknowledge the importance of both energies that we can begin to truly move forward. Not in haste or recklessness, but with clarity and purpose. In this journey of life, we are often faced with moments when the masculine energy rises up, demanding action. It's in those moments that we must remember the seed and the soil. One cannot grow without the other. Just as the seed needs the nurturing soil to flourish, so too does our drive for action need the tempering of stillness, reflection, and patience. Only then can we begin to shape our lives with true purpose. There are moments when life, with all its demands and rush, suddenly slows down. In those quiet moments, we are reminded of something profound, the power of stillness, of receptivity. It is a power that doesn't push, but instead invites, allowing us to lean in and listen, to sense what we cannot see, and to create from the quiet depths within. I remember such a moment, not too long ago. After the storm of constant doing, of action and striving, I found myself sitting in my favorite chair, a book unopened in my lap. The house was quiet. Outside, the world went on, cars passed, the sun set, and the familiar rhythm of the day continued. Yet inside, something different was happening. The energy of the world outside seemed to fade, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the pull of something gentler, something quieter. The feminine principle, I've come to realize, is not about doing, it is about being. It is the space between action and thought, the pause that allows everything to come together. In our fast-paced world, this energy is often overlooked. We are taught to value action, to prize productivity, and to always move forward. But as I sat there in the stillness, I began to understand that the feminine energy is what gives life meaning. It is the force that nourishes, that creates from within, that brings warmth and comfort when everything feels too much. Like the soil that cradles the seed, the feminine energy holds space for growth. It doesn't rush or force, it simply receives, nurtures, and transforms. I thought back to the times in my life when I had been so focused on moving forward, so determined to push and accomplish, that I had forgotten to listen. Forgotten that the quiet moments, the moments of reflection, were just as important as the moments of action. I recall a time, many years ago, when a close friend was going through a difficult time. I wanted to help, wanted to fix things, to provide a solution, but what they needed wasn't a quick fix. What they needed was someone to listen, to hold the space for their grief and confusion. I had learned, in that moment, that the feminine principle is not one of action but of presence. It is the ability to simply be there, to hold someone without needing to change anything. In that quiet presence, healing begins. This is the power of the feminine energy, its ability to transform from within, to nurture and create from a place of deep knowing, intuition, and empathy. It is the wisdom that comes with age, the understanding that we do not always need to do. Sometimes, we simply need to be. There are days when we feel disconnected from this part of ourselves. Life demands so much of us. There are tasks to complete, responsibilities to uphold, but the feminine energy is still there, quietly waiting. When we take the time to connect with it, to embrace stillness and intuition, we find that it has always been with us, guiding us, teaching us how to create not just from our minds, but from our hearts. It is a delicate dance. This relationship between the masculine and the feminine. We need both forces to create, to build, and to live fully. But it is in the quiet embrace of the feminine, in the listening and the nurturing, that we find the space to grow into who we are meant to be. As I sit here now, older and more aware, I understand that the quiet moments, those moments when we are still, when we listen, are not wasted. They are the moments when life, in all its richness, reveals itself, and it is in these moments that we can truly begin to create. Not just with our hands, but with our hearts. Life, in all its complexity, often feels like a balancing act. We move forward, take a step back, pause, then surge ahead again. Over time, I've come to see this rhythm as less of a struggle and more of a dance between two forces that shape everything we are and everything we create. This dance, the interplay of masculine and feminine energies, is not just theoretical, it's woven into the fabric of our daily lives, into every decision we make, and every experience we carry. I didn't always understand this. There were times when I thought balance was something to achieve and then maintain, like a trophy on a shelf. But life has a way of teaching us that balance is not a destination, it is an ongoing process. An ebb and flow. And it is in this process, in the dance itself, that we find meaning. I remember one particular season of my life, a time when I was faced with a decision so monumental it felt like the weight of it might break me. I was pulled in two directions, each choice carrying its own risks and rewards. On one side, the masculine energy urged me to act, to take the bold step, to push through my doubts and make things happen. On the other side, the feminine energy whispered for patience, for intuition, for trust in the unknown. I was caught between the two, unsure of which path to take. It was in those moments of uncertainty that I began to understand the true nature of balance. It wasn't about choosing one energy over the other, it was about letting them work together. Like partners in a dance, I allowed myself to sit with the decision, to listen not just to my mind, but to my heart. I let the masculine energy give me direction and purpose, while the feminine energy offered insight and clarity. And slowly, as the days passed, the path forward began to reveal itself. This experience taught me something invaluable. The balance between masculine and feminine energies is not static. It shifts and adapts, responding to the demands of each moment. There are times when action is required, when we must summon the courage to step forward, to create, to build, and there are times when stillness is the answer, when we must pause, reflect, and let the world come to us. The key is knowing which energy to lean into, and when. As I reflect on this balance, I see it everywhere in nature, in relationships, in the choices we make every day. It's in the way the sun rises, bold and unyielding, and the way the moon follows, soft and reflective. It's in the way a conversation unfolds, with one voice leading while the other listens. It's in the way a garden grows, with seeds planted in the soil and then nurtured by rain and light. This dance of energies is not without its challenges. There are moments when one energy takes over, dominating the other. We push too hard, act too quickly, and forget to listen. Or we wait too long, hesitate too much, and miss the opportunity to move forward. I've been on both sides of that imbalance, and I've felt the weight of it in my own life. But each misstep has taught me something about myself, about the world, and about the importance of finding harmony. Now, as I sit here in the quiet of my later years, I see the dance more clearly than ever. It is not a performance to perfect, but a rhythm to embrace. It is a reminder that life is not just about what we do, but also about how we feel, how we listen, and how we connect with the world around us. The masculine and feminine energies within us are not in opposition, they are partners, each bringing something essential to the table. The beauty of this dance lies in its imperfection. There will always be moments when we falter, when the balance tips too far in one direction. But that's the nature of life. It is messy and unpredictable, yet profoundly beautiful. And through it all, the dance continues, inviting us to step forward, to pause, and to move again. In the end, this dance is not just about energies or principles. It's about living fully, embracing the complexity of who we are, and finding joy in the journey. It's about learning to trust ourselves, our instincts, our wisdom, our capacity to grow. And as we move through this dance, we discover something extraordinary. The balance we seek is already within us, waiting to be awakened. Life has a way of teaching us balance by first allowing us to lose it. Sometimes, we don't even notice the imbalance creeping in until it has taken root, spreading quietly into the corners of our lives. It often begins with a small misstep, a decision made in haste, a moment of inaction, and before we know it, we find ourselves off kilter, caught in the grip of something we can't quite name. I've lived through these moments more than once, and if I'm honest, it's often in hindsight that their lessons become clear. One memory, in particular, stands out: a time when I leaned too far into one energy, ignoring the other. I had just retired, stepping away from decades of routine and structure. It felt liberating at first, as though the weight of expectations had finally lifted. I was ready to embrace the slower rhythms of life, to sink into the quiet joy of simply being. But somewhere along the way, the stillness turned into stagnation. Days blended together in a haze of comfort and routine, each one indistinguishable from the last. The feminine energy within me, the part that nurtures, reflects, and listens, had taken over completely. I avoided decisions, delayed action, and let opportunities slip by. I told myself I was resting, that I deserved this pause after years of striving. But the truth was, I had lost my spark, my sense of purpose. It wasn't until a friend gently pointed it out that I began to see the imbalance for what it was. "You seem adrift," she said one afternoon over coffee. "What are you working toward?" Her words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. I had been so focused on embracing stillness that I had forgotten the importance of movement. I was like a boat without a rudder, floating aimlessly, waiting for the current to decide my path. And yet, I've also seen the other side of this imbalance: the times when masculine energy has taken over, driving me to push too hard, to act without reflection. There was a time, years ago, when I took on too much at once, fueled by the need to prove something to myself and others. I worked tirelessly, convinced that every task, every goal, was essential. I told myself I was being productive, that I was accomplishing something meaningful. But in the process, I neglected the people and moments that truly mattered. I was so busy moving forward that I forgot to look around, to pause, to breathe. Both of these extremes, too much action, too much stillness, come with consequences. When we lean too far into masculine energy, life becomes a race, and we find ourselves running without knowing why. Relationships suffer, creativity dries up, and we feel a growing sense of emptiness, as though something vital is missing. But when we lean too far into feminine energy, the world begins to feel heavy and overwhelming. We lose our drive, our focus, and our ability to act. We become spectators in our own lives, watching the days pass by without truly living them. The lesson I've learned is not to avoid imbalance entirely. It's impossible to always maintain perfect harmony. Life will pull us in different directions, and there will be times when we falter, when one energy takes over and the other fades into the background. But these moments of imbalance are not failures, they are opportunities to grow, to learn, and to realign ourselves. In my own journey, I've found that the key is awareness, learning to recognize the signs of imbalance before they take hold. It's about asking ourselves the difficult questions: am I moving too fast? Or not moving at all? Am I listening to my intuition, or ignoring it in favor of logic? Am I nurturing myself and others, or am I too focused on achieving? These questions are not always easy to answer, but they are necessary. As I reflect on these lessons now, I see the beauty in the imperfections of this dance. Life is not about avoiding imbalance, it's about learning to navigate it with grace. It's about understanding that both masculine and feminine energies are vital, and that the interplay between them is what makes life rich and full. And it's about forgiving ourselves when we stumble, knowing that each step, whether forward, backward, or to the side, is part of the journey. In the end, imbalance is not the enemy. It is a teacher, showing us where we need to grow and reminding us of the delicate, beautiful dance of energies within us all. There comes a point in life when something shifts. It isn't dramatic, like a storm sweeping through the trees, nor is it loud, like a clap of thunder. No, this kind of change is quieter. It's like the first stirrings of spring after a long, cold winter. At first, you barely notice it, a faint warmth in the air, a soft light at the edges of the day. But then, slowly, the transformation begins. I've experienced this kind of rebirth more than once in my life. It never comes when I expect it. And it never looks the way I imagine it will. It often follows a period of imbalance. A time when I felt lost or stuck, unsure of how to move forward. It's as if life, in its infinite wisdom, knows when we've reached the edge of ourselves. And it offers us a way back, a chance to begin again. One such moment came to me not long ago. I had been grappling with the consequences of imbalance, feeling the weight of too much action or too much stillness. The days felt heavy, and I couldn't seem to find my footing. But then, one morning, as I sat watching the sunrise from my porch, something shifted. It wasn't a sudden epiphany or a grand realization. It was a quiet knowing, a sense that I was ready to try again. Rebirth, I've learned, doesn't happen all at once. It's a process, a series of small, deliberate steps. For me, it began with a single decision: to stop waiting for life to feel right and to start creating a life that felt meaningful. I began to listen to myself, to the world around me, to the quiet wisdom that so often gets drowned out by the noise of daily life. I asked myself what I truly wanted, not just in the moment, but in the larger story of my life. This process wasn't easy. Rebirth rarely is. It required me to face parts of myself I had ignored for too long, old fears, unspoken dreams, the pieces of my soul that had been buried under the weight of routine and responsibility. But as I began to unearth these parts of myself, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. I started small. I took walks in the early morning, letting the rhythm of my footsteps guide me. I wrote letters to old friends, rekindling connections that had grown quiet over the years. I allowed myself to dream, to imagine a life filled with purpose and joy. And slowly, as I took these small steps, I began to feel the balance returning, the interplay of masculine and feminine energies that had once felt so out of reach. Rebirth is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been. It's about shedding the layers of doubt and fear, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of. It's about rediscovering the spark that has always been there, waiting for the right moment to reignite. As I sit here now, reflecting on this journey, I see how the seeds of transformation were always within me. The masculine energy gave me the courage to act, to take those first, hesitant steps. The feminine energy taught me to trust the process, to nurture myself as I grew. Together, these forces created something extraordinary: a life that feels whole, balanced, and deeply alive. For those of us in the later seasons of life, rebirth can feel daunting. We think of transformation as something reserved for the young, for those with time and energy to spare. But I've come to believe that rebirth is a gift that belongs to all of us. No matter our age or circumstances, it is never too late to begin again, to plant new seeds and watch them grow. In many ways, this chapter of my life feels like spring: quiet, gentle, full of promise. The blooms may come slower than they once did, but they are no less beautiful. And as I continue this journey of transformation, I am reminded of something simple yet profound. Life is not about how quickly we grow or how far we go. It is about the dance, the balance, and the quiet, steady unfolding of who we are meant to be. As I sit here now, reflecting on the journey of my life, I find myself thinking about the idea of union, not just with others, but within myself. This union, often called the alchemical marriage in ancient traditions, is not about romance or partnerships. It's about something far deeper: the integration of opposites, the blending of two essential forces that live within each of us. For much of my life, I didn't realize these forces were even there. Like many, I lived by habit and instinct, pulled in different directions without understanding why. There was the part of me that wanted to act boldly, to take charge, to build and achieve, and there was another part, quieter but just as insistent, that urged me to listen, to nurture, to create from a place of stillness. These forces, the masculine and the feminine, seemed at odds with one another. For years, I treated them as if they were. It wasn't until later, when life slowed down, that I began to see their harmony. I remember a particular moment, one of those ordinary days that somehow stays with you forever. I was standing in the kitchen, the afternoon light streaming through the window. I had been working on a project, something that required focus and precision. When I suddenly paused, the project wasn't urgent, but I had been treating it as if it were. In that moment, I realized I had been pushing too hard, relying solely on the masculine energy of action and direction. What I needed was balance, a moment to step back, to breathe, to allow my intuition to guide me. That small pause, that brief moment of awareness, was the beginning of a shift. I started to see how these two energies, masculine and feminine, weren't opposing forces at all. They were partners, each bringing something vital to the table. The masculine gave me the strength to act, to face challenges, to pursue my goals. The feminine gave me the wisdom to listen, to adapt, to create with purpose and meaning. Together, they formed a whole. This integration didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, through trial and error, through moments of imbalance and recalibration. There were times when I leaned too heavily on one energy, only to find myself exhausted or adrift. But each misstep taught me something. I began to recognize when I was pushing too hard, when I was ignoring the quiet voice within. I learned to trust that voice, to let it guide me even when I didn't have all the answers. The ancient alchemists spoke of the marriage of the king and queen as a symbol of this integration. The king, representing the masculine, brings order, focus, and strength. The queen, representing the feminine, brings intuition, creativity, and compassion. When they come together, they create something greater than themselves, a wholeness, a balance, a life lived in harmony. I've come to see this balance not as a destination, but as a practice. It's not about achieving perfect harmony and staying there forever. It's about the daily dance, the constant interplay between action and reflection, between striving and surrendering. It's about recognizing when one energy has taken over and gently bringing the other back into the fold. In the quiet of these later years, I feel this balance more deeply than ever. There is a peace that comes with knowing you don't have to choose between opposites. That you can hold both strength and softness, both logic and intuition, within yourself. It's a peace that allows you to move through life with grace, to face its challenges with courage and its joys with open arms. This alchemical marriage is not a grand event. It's a series of small moments, pausing to listen when you'd rather act, stepping forward when you'd rather stay still, finding the courage to pursue your dreams and the wisdom to let them unfold in their own time. It's about trusting yourself, about knowing that everything you need is already within you. As I look back on my journey, I see how far I've come, not in miles or accomplishments, but in the quiet, steady work of becoming whole. And as I sit here now, the light fading outside my window, I feel a deep gratitude for this dance, for this union of energies that has shaped my life and carried me forward. It is a marriage not of opposites, but of harmony, a reminder that we are, and always have been, complete. There is a quiet wisdom that comes with age, a perspective that only time and experience can offer. It's not something you chase or find in books, it settles over you gently, like the first light of dawn. And with it comes an understanding that life is not about perfection, nor is it about control. Life is about harmony, about finding a rhythm that allows you to live fully, without fear of what lies ahead or regret for what's been left behind. In these later years, I have come to see my life as a tapestry, woven together by the threads of both masculine and feminine energies. Each thread has played its part, creating a picture that is far from perfect, yet profoundly whole. There were times when the threads tangled, when the balance was lost, and I felt myself pulling in opposite directions. But now, as I look back, I see how those moments of struggle were just as essential as the moments of peace. They taught me the value of integration, the beauty of allowing both energies to coexist within me. Living in harmony does not mean avoiding challenges or never faltering. It means knowing how to realign when life pulls you off course. It means recognizing the signs when you're pushing too hard, when you're hesitating too long, and gently bringing yourself back to center. It's not about fighting against the tide, but learning to move with it, to trust that the current will guide you where you need to go. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is that balance is not static. It shifts and evolves, just as we do. There are days when the masculine energy takes the lead, urging me to act, to create, to move forward with purpose. And there are days when the feminine energy steps in, inviting me to rest, to reflect, to simply be. Both are necessary, both are gifts, and together, they create a life that feels rich and complete. I see this balance not only in myself but in the world around me. In the rising and setting of the sun, in the changing of the seasons, in the way the ocean ebbs and flows. Nature, in its infinite wisdom, has always understood this dance between opposing forces. The earth cannot thrive with endless summer, nor can it survive in perpetual winter. It needs both the warmth of growth and the stillness of rest. And so do we. As I write this now, I am reminded of a moment not long ago. I was sitting by the window, watching a bird build its nest in the tree outside. It worked tirelessly, weaving twigs and leaves into a home that would shelter and protect its young. But every so often, the bird would pause, sitting quietly on the branch as if to admire its work. It struck me then how instinctively this creature understood the balance of effort and rest, of doing and being. And I thought to myself, isn't that what we're all trying to learn? Living in harmony means embracing both sides of ourselves, the strength and the softness, the logic and the intuition, the action and the reflection. It means giving yourself permission to be whole, to honor every part of who you are. It means understanding that life is not a straight path but a dance, one that we learn step by step, moment by moment. In these later years, I find joy in the small things, the way sunlight filters through the trees, the sound of laughter shared with loved ones, the quiet satisfaction of a day well lived. These moments remind me that harmony is not something grand or unattainable. It's in the way we move through the world, in the choices we make, in the way we treat ourselves and others. I've learned that harmony is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting the journey, about knowing that every experience, every success, every failure, every quiet moment in between is a thread in the tapestry of our lives. And as I sit here now, with the weight of years behind me and the unknown ahead, I feel a deep sense of peace. Not because I've figured it all out, but because I've learned to trust the dance. The harmony we seek has always been within us, waiting to be awakened. It's in the way we listen to ourselves, the way we honor our instincts and our dreams. It's in the way we learn to move with life, rather than against it. And as we embrace this balance, we discover something extraordinary. Life, in all its complexity, is beautiful not because it's perfect, but because it's ours.